Hello and welcome back to day 6 of the Self-Connection in Isolation exclusive interview series, where I've been bringing together extraordinary souls from across the globe who are doing amazing work in this world, who absolutely dedicate themselves and their lives to impacting and influencing in a positive direction and inspiring direction to help us all navigate the challenges and the chaos of life, and in particular why this series is being put together for all the craziness and the all that chaos being brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. So this series is all about taking you out of the fear zone, putting you into the growth zone, connecting, getting clarity, and challenging you to not stay small and stuck, but actually reach for your greatness, despite what our external world is putting upon us. So today's amazing guest, I don't think really needs an introduction. Everybody that is in this community is super excited about today's interview with the incredible Dr. John Demartini, who is a world-renowned specialist in human behavior, a researcher, author, and global educator. And I'm honored to have been to a couple of his amazing seminars, Master Planning for Life and the Breakthrough Experience. Absolutely phenomenal and highly recommended. And I want to start off today by asking you, Dr. Demartini, what are you most grateful for in your life right now?
Right this minute?
Yep.
To have the opportunity to be interviewed by yourself. This is great. I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely.
That's a great gift. So I thank you for that. I have lots to be grateful for. I have, if I go around the 7 areas of life, I still have my mind functioning, and I still love learning, and I learn every single day. And I am grateful for the opportunity to learn and share what I learn with people. I'm grateful that my business is done as well as it is. It seems to be actually going up right now, more so than anything. It's expanding. So I've been very blessed to have global business. My finances have done, it's peaking this week because of the markets. I bought a lot of the market this week, and I've made a fortune. My relationship, I've got an international relationship dynamic that's quite inspiring. I just got off the Skype with. I have, socially, I've been blessed to meet a lot of people and get to interact with people around the world, meeting amazing people. Physically, I'm going on 66, and I'm still cranking. And most people don't believe I'm 66, but I'm going on 66. And I recently, in 65, I surfed the North Shore pipeline on the North Shore, riding big waves, and more than twice my size waves, almost 3 times. And I'm inspired. So I really have so much to be grateful for. I really don't have anything not to be grateful for, really, in my life right now.
That's such an amazing answer, and one that I was sure I was going to get from you, all around inspiration. And I know I'd love for you to share with our audience a little bit about, you've shown me this personally when I've sat with you at a Master Planning for Life and looked at what you have created, and you continuously add to each and every day on your laptop, not your mobile phone, because we know you don't have one of those. But yeah, share with everybody a little bit about, how important gratitude is to you and what you do every day.
Well, it's interesting. I've got my computer propped up on that book that you just mentioned. I didn't know you were going to ask for that, but I've got it here. This is 25 volumes. This is one of the first volume number 1 of 25 volumes of everything that I am working on in my life, from my mission statement, which I don't know if you can see it up there.
Yeah.
Life mission statement and purpose statement. It has my biography. It has my standards I want to live by. It has my uniquenesses. It has all of my objectives in each of the primary areas of life. It has the metrics that I've been accumulating over the last 47 years since I started this book. It has all of my gratitudes. I have, this is the beginning of the next volume. So this will be volume 26. but I keep records of all my gratitudes on a daily basis. And believe it or not, I typed yours in there before I got on. I just had the opportunity to do your interview, and I'm grateful because you helped me impact and reach people that I wouldn't reach otherwise. And that's been my long-term dream and vision in the world, to make a difference in the world. So I keep a record every single day. When I get off this one, I have another one. I've been doing them all day. I have another one that I get to do with a person who specializes in multifamily syndicate investings, where they buy large complexes of apartment complexes and real estate holdings, and multiple people work together to build wealth together. And he has a culture of people all building wealth together. And I'm going to be talking with him because he wants me to come and educate those people, et cetera. So I get the opportunity to interact with people who are doing amazing things in the world. And I get to learn from that and get to contribute to that. And I get to have something to be grateful for every day. If you fill your day with the highest priority action steps or actions and opportunities that you can fill your day with that are deeply meaningful, that are inspiring to you, and you every day fill your day with that, it doesn't fill up with other stuff. And then you have something to be grateful for every day, and you can document it, and you can take command of your life. I always say you can live by default or live by design. You can become victim of history, or you can be master of destiny. So I'm a firm believer at filling, every day with how I want it, instead of letting other people fill it how I don't.
Absolutely. So much wisdom just shared. And I really just want to honor and acknowledge you, Dr. Demartini, because one of the things that you really inspire me with is your humbleness. And, you've done so much beautiful work. You continue to do so much extraordinary work that changes people's lives, myself included. Yet you just showered me with a whole lot of appreciation for this opportunity. And, a lot of other leaders, these days, it's not really seen that way. It would be absolutely a great opportunity for me, maybe not so much for them. And that really inspires me. You're a phenomenal role model as a leader.
I had a lady who is a yogi, who contacted me and wrote this beautiful little letter. And she said, I would love to interview you. I don't have a big following. I know you would help me get a bigger following, but you inspired me, and you helped me start my yoga school. And my dream was to be a yoga and have my own school. And I watched one of your videos, and I decided to do that. And I had a dream to have you my first person I interviewed about it at my school, as the first teacher at my school. I said, would you come on and do an interview? I'm going to get every student I have available to come and listen if you do it. It wasn't a big following yet. But it was so inspiring to see her go after her dream that I got a tear in the eye. You know what I'm talking about.
I'm feeling it. I'm getting the tear myself.
I got a tear in my eye because I realized that here's a person that had a dream, and Lord knows where that could go. And someday, if she stays with that dream, she's going to make a massive difference. And so, you got kids at every level of school, and some are at PhDs and executives and things, and some are just starting out, but they're all on their journey. And so sometimes wherever people are, that maybe they're not the most empowered individuals known yet, but sometimes they're the ones that are going to be. And so I'm pretty blessed. I thought about if I was speaking in an audience. I've spoken to 28,000 people, 11,000 people, down to one individual in a day. I've done all the above. But I thought, if I got a little podcast or a little webinar or whatever, and they've got X number of hundreds or thousands of people, I would be grateful if I was doing that live. Why wouldn't I be grateful for doing it online? Because today it's all online. We reach millions of people online every day now. So yeah, when I was a teenager, I didn't think I would ever be able to read, and didn't think I'd ever be able to speak properly, and didn't think that I would probably do anything but make surfboards on the North Shore and live in a tent, because I was living in a tent at the time. Today I have a different life because I started applying the principles that I learned along the way And I learned that if I share them with people, I learn it more effectively. And if I help them, I get more inspired and I feel more fulfilled. And so how can I not do that? Because we all win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually share that completely. Learning from amazing people such as yourself and gleaning that wisdom from your experience and then being able to teach it and pass it on to different people from my own experience is absolutely inspiring and totally allows you to learn at a higher capacity. And just on that whole online thing, I actually realized before, this is the third time I've had the honor of getting to interview you, but the very first time we've ever done it online. We've always managed to be able to do it offline.
Which... You got to do it. Sometimes we have to do it in very strange, tight little, places and figure out how to make a studio out of a place.
Exactly. It's good fun. I kind of like it. All right, awesome. So my very first question, and I've actually had some of my clients who are really excited to potentially have been on live with you, but didn't quite work out with the whole Instagram thing. So we're doing it on Zoom. So I've kind of captured a couple of questions from my audience that they definitely wanted to ask you. But the first question I have is one that one of the reasons why I wanted to do this series and invite people such as yourself was because I'm seeing with my own clients and just everybody I'm interacting with, and even just going down the shopping center and, seeing what's going on in that environment. I was seeing that there were these three different things from my perspective that we need to focus on in order to navigate this in a direction that's going to lead us to a path of inspiration rather than, send us back into fear. So the first question that I have is around this concept of connection. So self-connection, connecting with the self. So my question is, what is your best strategy for connecting with the self and creating an internal stability in a time where, we're faced with such external chaos? So what would be your best strategy with that? And why would that be important from your perspective, if at all?
Bill Gates does something, I think, daily that's wise, that I'd like to share as a beginning of the answer. And it's a nutshell. I'm going to paraphrase it. It's not the exact words, but it's close. Mm-hmm. He asks himself on a daily basis, what is the highest priority action that I could do today to serve the greatest number of people with the resources I have access in my awareness to, in the most effective and efficient pathway possible that inspires me? Great question.
Wow. Yeah.
And Mary Kay, for Mary Kay Cosmetics, who I had the opportunity to lecture to 36 years ago or so at an Anatole in Dallas, at a big convention area, 4,500 women. After I spoke to her, I went up to her and asked her this one question. What advice could you give a young, aspiring speaker, international speaker that wants to travel the world and share? And she had her hair all up and she was very glamorous. And she said, every day, write down the absolute highest priority actions you can conceive of that will fulfill the highest priority goals that you dream of. And make sure they're broken down into small action steps for the day, not projects for days, weeks, or months, or years, but just the actions for the day, the 6 or 7, and write those down and go do them in as close as priority as possible and make a commitment to do that day. Mm-hmm. Have no carry-ons the next day. If you get them all done early, add another one. Mm-hmm. But don't stack up a goal overrun where you stack up 20 or 30 or 40 and then you always feel like you're overwhelmed. Just add one more, but get them done and then reward yourself in whatever way you perceive rewarding yourself for doing the things that you love every day. And then document the impact it's having on your life and other people's lives so you have feedback to be grateful for. If you do that, you will discover every day that you do that a pattern of what becomes the highest priority. So I did this on little 3x5 index cards originally. And I kept those 7 things every day. And I kept them in a little box. And then I went back to that box after months, and I looked at what was the most common highest priority thing that was the highest priority of the highest priorities. What showed up at the top priority the most, second most, third most. And it came out, to experience expression, it came out to 4 things.
Yeah.
Pardon me for moving this. But it came out to those 4 things, which is sitting on the front. Research, write, travel, teach.
Yeah.
So once I realized that, I then realized that if I do anything other than the highest priority things, I devalue myself. Pardon me for moving this around.
Yeah.
So I made a commitment that I would work towards delegating everything off my plate except the things that absolutely inspired me, that made the biggest difference most. You can't live an inspired life unless you do the highest priority things, unless you delegate the lowest priority things, which forces you to care enough about humanity to make a contribution to humanity, to get paid so your vacation and vocation are the same. And that way you get paid to do something you love to do and delegate the rest away. So I don't do anything else. I'm useless everywhere else. I don't drive. I haven't driven in 31 and a half years now. I haven't cooked since I was 24, and I'm 66 almost. So I don't do anything. I delegate everything. Because if you're doing low priority things, you're devaluing yourself. In your hierarchy of values, anytime you do the highest priority things, you value yourself. Anytime you go down on lower values, you do devalue yourself. So why do something that devalues you when you can get rewarded and inspired and fulfilled doing the things that you value most, that inspire and help people? And when you're doing something that's high in your values, you love to take on challenges that inspire you, that make a difference. And that's where you make the biggest difference. And when you live authentically that way, you make the biggest difference because your values are unique. You're not going to make a difference fitting in and doing what everybody else does. You're going to make a difference standing out and being yourself. So that's what I would recommend for people to get the most out of their day and most out of their life. And then they'll have much to be grateful for on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And so, it seems so simple when you say it. It seems so clear. And so why from your perspective are people not living, they're subordinating, as you would say, to the outside world, rather than valuing themselves enough to live in their values, to live in inspiration? Why are people, they might have that knowledge and hear this information, but actually not apply it?
According to anthropologists, there was a time when we were nomadic. And human beings lived sparsely, living off hunting and gathering, they think. And as a result, as long as there was a plentiful amount of food, people survived. And then around 12 to 14,000 years, give or take, we started the agricultural era. And we started to become sedentary. And we started to create trade for different specialties. And economics was kind of born. And we started to have more of a sedentary life, etc. And we depended, because we didn't do but our specialty, we became more and more dependent on other people. And so anybody that was casted out into nomadic world again, and going back to the earlier form, didn't always survive out there, because they're losing their ability to be resilient out in nature and being hunting or gatherers, because people started living where they didn't need to be around, where there was fruits and good environments. So people got in the idea, in their instinct, that if I get rejected by people, I could die. And it's sitting epigenetically into our instincts to protect us from being, admonished and pushed away and rejected. So fitting in and being part of the herd meant survival. And people instinctively have that idea that I want to fit in, I don't want to do it. And they have what they can is called brain offloading. When they are in a situation, because they've specialized, when they're in a situation they don't know something about, they feel angst. And so they go and find somebody they think has more knowledge about it, and then they live vicariously and need them and look up to them and admire them. So we end up having greater numbers of admired people around us with different specialties because we specialize.
Yeah.
And we don't have the ability to live, with lots of diversity out in the nomadic world out there. So as a result of it, we've got a built-in fear of being rejected, a built-in fear of having to make decisions on our own, outside our core competence. And as a result of it, we have a yearning to want to make sure that we follow tradition, convention, and things that seem to have a long-lasting history. But the problem with that is it's stagnation. If we live by the same traditions that have been going on for centuries, we have slow evolution and we don't evolve much. And it's the renegades, the mavericks, the unborrowed visionaries, the square pegs and round holes, the misfits, as Steve Jobs says, that actually stir things up and disrupt it and take things to new levels. Just like NASA had been stagnant compared to Elon Musk, that opened up a door of opportunities and just blew past NASA. And now they're working together as a team, but it's still that individual that went out there and became an unborrowed visionary and a trailblazer. They're like on fire, and it's hard to not watch them spread across and make a new paradigm. So the person that has the courage to stand out and be original will get ridiculed, violently opposed by the paradigms and the traditions and conventions, because it makes them now have to deal with their fear of rejection. And so there's a lot of peer pressure. And we have to, as Emerson says, envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. We have to have the courage to stand out and be our authentic selves. But at the same time, do it in a way that serves other people, so you lessen the rejection, contribute the most, have the most fulfillment, and get to be unique.
Oh my gosh, you're just hitting me with so much wisdom. I'm just like taking pages of notes here. That was such a good answer, because I just had some connection points for myself then. This fear of rejection, which, yeah, definitely that's something that I personally work on still in my life, and every time I've let fear of rejection hold me back, it's stacked up and up and up to the point where I can take no more, and I have to focus on just breaking through that with courage. And always the piece that allows me to take that step forward with courage is when I'm not doing it based on my own fears of rejection and attempting to be something somebody else wants me to be, but instead about others.
You have a bigger cause.
Yeah.
I say, if you want to make a difference in yourself, you need a vision at least as big as your family. If you want to make a difference in your family, you need a vision as big as your community. If you want to make a difference in your community, be the leader in your community, you need a vision as big as your city. If you want to be number one in the city, you need a vision as big as your state. If you want to be number one in the state, you need a vision as big as your nation. If you want to be number one in the nation, country, you need a cause that's global. And if you want to be a global impactor, a global thought leader, or whatever it is, you need an astronomical vision. An astronomical vision is the calling of the soul. It's a celestial. I always say that at the level of the soul, at the celestial broadening expansion of the soul, nothing's missing in us. We're the hero, the villain, we're everything. Nothing's missing. At the level of the senses, the existential senses, we have these judgments. We're too proud to admit what we see in some people inside us, and we're too humble to admit what we see in others inside us. And as long as we're too humble or too proud, and we're minimizing ourselves or exaggerating ourselves, we're not being ourselves. And as a result of it, when we're too humble or too proud, we're looking down on people, wanting to change them to live in our values, which is futile. We're too humble, we're wanting to live in their values, which is futile. And we're comparing and judging instead of loving and reflecting. And once we go back to loving and reflecting and realizing that whatever we see around us and the heroes and villains around us, the people we have up pedestals and pits, are all ultimate reflections of parts that we haven't loved inside ourselves. And so instead of comparing ourselves to others, the wisest thing is to compare our own daily actions to what's most deeply meaningful in our own highest priorities. And when we do, we're most resilient, most objective, least judging, and most expanded. And then when we more expand ourselves, it's hard to judge those other people. So we liberate ourselves from the judgments, and we put people in our hearts instead of in pits and pedestals.
I love that. And this is so energizing and enlivening to my soul, just having this conversation and being reminded of how amazing, getting to ask you questions is. the question that I have to ask you about that is around rejection. So you're saying that if we have that fear, that innate fear of rejection, if we can own all parts within ourselves and stop rejecting those parts of ourselves, we can therefore navigate, you know, just stepping outside of the fear and into that courage and that inspiration. So maybe using other, and this is the breakthrough experience, a big part of it, isn't it?
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
as long as we're addicted to praise, reprimand's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Praise and reprimand are two poles of a magnet.
Mm-hmm.
You try to separate them, you can't.
Yeah.
If you get addicted to praise, reprimand hurts.
Mm-hmm.
The more this is pleasure, the more this is pain.
Mm.
If you're infatuated with something, you fear its loss. If you resent something, you fear its gain. So the more polarized you are, and the more biased you are, and the more you see things in black and white, the more distressed you are, the more philic and phobic you are, and the more you run from the outside. Because anything you infatuate and resent occupies space and time and mind and runs you. And so you're not running you. Those misperceptions of the world around you are running you, the people around you.
Mm.
But when you're more objective and you realize that the seer, the seeing, and the seen are the same, whatever you see in them is you. And you can love that. See, I'm a hero and villain. I'm not a nice person. I'm not a mean person. I'm not kind. I'm not cruel. I'm not generous. I'm not stingy. I'm all the above, depending on the setting. When I don't try to get rid of any part of myself and I eventually embrace all parts of myself, when I see those people, I don't react and seek or avoid, and they don't run me. I realize they're just reflections of me. And when I can love all those parts, I can love them, and I'm not reacting and I'm not judging. I'm focused on my mission. So in the breakthrough experience, that's one of the things we do. We sit there and own the parts. Because any part you can't own is a void in your life of emptiness that is going to want to be filled. And you're going to attract people in your life to make you realize through infatuation, resentment, that these are things you're still judging in yourself, to teach you to love that too. I don't need to get rid of half of myself to love myself. That's a lot of people are trying to get rid of something about their life in the form of self-improvement or something. There's nothing needing improvement. You have everything already. It's going to be with you all your life. You might as well learn to use all the parts of your nature. I went to the Oxford Dictionary many, many years ago, 30-something years ago. And instead of waiting for people to push my buttons, I went into the dictionary to find out what buttons I might be pushed by. And I went through and I circled every possible human behavioral trait that a person could have in a giant Oxford Dictionary. I came up with 4,628 individual traits. Yes, I'm neurotic. And I went in there and I circled them all or underlined them. And then I thought of who do I know that displays that trait to the most extreme example? Who do I know that I've been reactive positively or negatively by that trait? And I put their initial out there. And then I went next to them and I thought, where and when do I display or demonstrate that behavior? And I identify where it was, kind of when it was, who did I do it to, who perceived me that way. And I kept digging and digging and digging until I realized that whatever I saw in them, I have to the same degree. When I owned it, when I met them, instead of being enamored with them or resentful to them, I just saw they're doing some of the same things I do at times. Don't take it seriously.
Absolutely.
And I had less reaction from the world around me and more proaction from the heart within me.
And, you know, one of the amazing things that I remember from attending one of your breakthrough experiences was actually seeing and witnessing you step into all parts of who you are, which I'd never seen another leader do. You know, a lot of leaders are, you know, they're this one particular huge personality or whatever they are, but you don't get to see the spectrum and the reality that I saw within you. And what was really interesting to me during that experience was that one of the people that was sitting next to me was somebody that you had that experience with, and you really challenged that person, where most people would have just, you know, oh, poor you, poor you. You really went in there, you really challenged him. And it was so beneficial to me as a leader in my own business and personally, because I was getting a bit ticked off by this guy, you know, who was playing the victim. And I ended up by the end of that experience actually using him to represent a person in my life that I could actually start to own those parts within myself as to where I'm playing the victim in different parts of my life. So, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a guy in Perth one time, Australia, that he was resenting his father. Mm-hmm. And I was about his father's age. Mm-hmm. And so I'm now representing his father in the program. And he and his father used to really butt heads. They'd have like fights. Yeah. And so I made a statement in there, and he was disruptive in the class a bit. And he was, because I was representing his father, he was trying to make it look like, you can't control me. I didn't care about controlling the guy. But what happened is I walked over to him and I said, it'd be really helpful to the group as a leader, exemplifying if you were to do the work. Because if you don't do the work and you give permission for other people to do it, they're not going to get the most out of the program. He says, you can't tell me what to do, guy. And I said, oh, so I represent your father. Are you doing your father? And he goes, yeah. I said, okay. And so I had a really good challenge with him. And he got stood up and he was like ready to fight his father. And the whole room could see what was going down. It was really quite interesting. And there were a couple of people that were frightened about, this guy is bigger than I was and they were going to, hurt me or something. And I just stood my ground. And the reason why I stood my ground is because I wasn't angry at him. I was just trying to get him to do the job. And I knew that my intention was clear. Mm-hmm. When your intention is clear, it's amazing what you get away with. Now, this guy ran out of the program probably 20 minutes later after I confronted him. He got pissed off again, ran out of the program, came back in, and then had one of the most amazing breakthroughs. On Sunday, he didn't finish Saturday night. He finished Sunday. And the whole room saw the confrontations. But on Sunday, he came from the back of the room, picked his person to be the surrogate, opened his heart, and then came up afterwards and came up to me with tears in his eyes and hugged me. And the whole room saw it. And there were a lot of people with tears. And he was like a son to me, and I was his father. He says, I finally now understand everything you tried to do for me. Mm-hmm. I completely had twisted it what it was. I can now see that you love me. He says, I have been angry for you for 27 years. Right now, all I have is this deep, open-hearted feeling of love for you. Thank you, Dad. Mm-hmm. That whole room was just absolutely in tears. And yeah. I was in tears. And we were embracing each other. And he played the role. And he went back and he goes, thank you. If you hadn't have pushed me, I might have walked out of this program and missed out on what you just gave me.
Oh, wow. And, that's just bringing tears to my eyes as well, because this stuff and this work that you do is just so profound. For myself, in the work that I do, I usually attend events, and my mindset was, I just want to gather tools that I can help other people with. I don't really have much to work on here. I'm not sure, because you hear other people having these traumatic experiences, but just putting myself wholeheartedly into the processes, I had no idea I, had this work to do around my grandmother, had this work to do around an ex-partner. And it was just, by the end of that experience was so profound on a whole level I wasn't expecting. And just hearing that man's story is so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that story with us.
Can I share another one?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
This is not too dissimilar. But I was in Breakthrough in Sydney, and these just happen to be come from Australia, not just because you're in Australia, but that just happened to be. And I asked the people in the room, who is the person that's pushed the biggest buttons in your life that you have probably avoided, run away from, and kept running into in new forms? And this guy picked up, he said, well, my father. And at age 16, him and his father had a major blowout, a fist fight, a real boxing match. And the father and him literally beat each other. And the father kicked him out of the house and said, never come back. Well, he was resentful to his father from age 16. And now add 42 years to that, he's 58. Yeah. And he's not seen his father since he was 16. There'd been no contact, no interaction. As far as he's concerned, his father did not exist.
Mm-hmm.
His father is 82. Now he goes through and does this methodology, the Demartini method that I developed. And he was not wanting to do it because after 42 years, you've got a story and you believe that story, whether it's true or not, you believe it and you make that your life story. Mm-hmm. And your life is that. And so if that changes, it's like an identity crisis. You don't know what that is. Mm-hmm. And that's been the driving force and the motive. And in spite of him, I became somebody kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But when he actually did methodically the method and he started working the process, around 11:30 at night, he started to break through a bit. And then I went over to him because my facilitator said he's still not pushing through like he's holding back because he didn't want to change it and start to appreciate his father because then he threw away 42 years of his life in his mind. Mm-hmm. But I got in there and I said, you're comparing what your father did to a fantasy about how he should have been. Mm-hmm. So you are expecting your dad to be supportive and generous and all this other stuff. And as a result of you resented him. I said, did you have any brothers and sisters? He said, yes. Did you have a brother? Yes. Did he treat your brother the same way? Did he leave home too? No. They got along and he took care of him and he was gentle and everything else. I said, so what you're saying is that you wished you could have had what your brother had. Would you want to trade places with him today? He goes, oh God, no. He still lives at home. He's never left the home. He's never had a job. He's waiting for dad to die. He hasn't done anything from what I hear. I said, you said that you wanted your father to be that way. But you became the entrepreneur. You're the one that has a beautiful family. You're the one that has become wealthy and accomplished and driven. You think it's been in spite of your dad. Are you sure it's not because of your dad? Huh. And he said, wow, I was comparing myself to a fantasy. I never even asked what's the drawback of the fantasy. And I would have ended up like my brother. And I would not take that any day. And he started to get tears in his eyes. And he got, wow, I thought it's because in spite of my dad, but it's actually because of my dad. He helped me forced me to become an entrepreneur. And I said, your dad would have found you, traced you if he didn't think you could do it. Mm. But he believed you could stand on your own 2 feet, or he would have followed you and found you and made sure you were okay. But he believed in you. He didn't believe in the brother. And he bawled down in tears. He opened his heart and he said something to a surrogate in the program. You know how we get the surrogates up there. And he communicated with his dad, and it was a tear-jerking moment. And the guy said something back to him that was just exactly what he needed to hear. It was really tear-jerking. It's now 12:15. I close the program. He decides to contact his dad, who's in a different time zone, still awake. And he contacted his dad, got on the phone, and said, this is your son. And says, I'd like to see if I could come and see you. And the father, instead of being a monster, said, that would mean a lot to me. I would absolutely love to hear all about your life, son. So he goes on Wednesday. This is Saturday night. Well, Sunday morning. He goes on Wednesday to visit his dad and flies over to see his dad. Now, not seeing your dad for 42 years has got to be a pretty interesting meeting. He said what he wanted to say to his dad, as he said to the guy in the chair on Saturday night. And his dad said the identical words at the guy in the chair, which made him cry, which made him hug his dad, and the dad had completion. He left, that was Wednesday. Thursday, he left and flew back. Friday, his father passed away. He came to the next breakthrough, and he said to me, he came up, a big guy, he comes up to me, puts his arms around me, looks at me, and says, if I had not done that little exercise, I might have never, ever realized how much I love my dad and get to tell him that before he died. I really believe that he was waiting for that, and he didn't want to die until he heard from his son. And I really believe that that guy shifted his whole perspective and realized that was a contribution to his life. So, yeah, the real truth is there's something magnificent going on, but we don't see it. Because we compare our current reality to fantasies about how life's supposed to be, because we get addicted to the support without the challenge, the ease without the difficulty, the pleasures without the pains, the one-sided world instead of life as it is. But the magnificence of the way it really is far greater than any fantasies we impose on it. And I think that gentleman was a good example of what's possible for any human being who's accumulated in their subconscious mind incomplete awarenesses and have been a bit of unconscious of the magnificences of what's going on in their life.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm getting so emotional. I don't think I've ever cried during an interview before, but it's absolutely deeply touching my heart. You know, the thing that inspires me the most is kindness between strangers, and in such a way that you can impact and have a ripple effect like the work that you do does. And I know this interview will have that effect as well. And what I want to ask you now is, how can we all, during this time of chaos where people, you know, have this misconception of reality, or they're comparing reality to their fantasy, and that's what's creating potentially their chaos and their unease and resentment to the situation, what perspective are they missing? How can we help to balance them out?
Well, in the apparent chaos of our reality, which is that which is realized through our senses, is a hidden order. And extracting meaning out of events is one of the keys to accessing the order. Aristotle called the mean between the polarities of perception. So there's pleasure and pain, but the mean is the combination. So if you see a drawback and you're conscious of the downsides and not conscious of the upsides, extracting meaning out of it is to finding out what's the upsides. And if you're infatuated with something and you're exhilarated by a manic, not a panic, and you're seeing and conscious of the upsides, but not conscious of the downsides, extracting meaning out of it is finding the downsides and bringing it back into the mean, back into the middle, the bell curve distribution in the center. Because it deviates. And every time we deviate, we become a deviant in our own experience. But asking questions that equilibrate the mind and liberate us from the infatuations and resentments that make us in bondage and store in our consciousness as noise in the brain and as subconscious baggage. By asking the questions that equilibrate the mind, it liberates us. And we find meaning in it, and we find out that there was nothing out of order in the first place.
Oh my God.
Leibniz, a German philosopher, mathematician, theologian, helped develop the calculus as Newton did. And he did a little exercise that I read when I was 18. When I first started learning how to read, I got a dictionary out and I tried to tackle his discourse on metaphysics. And in there, he did a little exercise. He had 20 students in a room, and he asked them to, on a little piece of paper, to put 20 dots on the paper randomly. But put them and number them in the sequence, but make it as random. So 1 and 2 and 3, and just as randomly as you can, but put 20 dots and number them. And then he says, and then turn that to me, hand it over to me. And then he put a Cartesian mathematical grid between an X and Y axis on it. And then he wrote down a formula at the bottom of the page from looking at it, and then said, now fill in the formula of the function of X relative to Y. And to their surprise, he wrote down a formula that described what their random behavior was. And he says, random behavior is not being able to process the number of variables and events that are going on because the numbers of variables are too astronomical for the average mind to conceive. That had an impact. The same thing Einstein did when he wrote a book called Brownian Movement, Brownian Motion. He did the same thing. He extracted out things and filtered out water out of a ditch. And he noticed there was Brownian movement, random movement in there. But as he extracted it out and got down to just one individual thing, he could actually figure out the movement and the reasons why it was moving. And then he'd add another little speck in there, and he would then figure it out. He says the only reason that there's a perception disorder is because we don't know all the variables. And it led to the idea of indeterminism versus determinism. Pascal believed there was determinism and everything is be determinable, and there was a rational order to it, and others didn't. But stop and think about it. Science, it's the very foundation of science is pursuing the rational order, the mathematical order of what is existing.
Mm.
If there wasn't some sort of rational order in the universe, there'd be no point in science. There would be just stochastic probabilistic constructs that we can only have the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. We can never know the position and momentum of anything, and the two covariables would never be understood. But the idea that we have the ability to have science means that there is some sort of rational order, and many things that people have not found the order to, they have not penetrated the mystery to the order to, they still call chaos. But there's been thousands of things that were called chaos 2,000 years ago that are now understood to have great order. So I'm a firm believer that just because we don't know all the variables doesn't mean that it's not there. And I've been on a pursuit in human behavior to find that hidden order in what people call chaos. But I'm convinced that there's a matrix. And I work with a post-traumatic stress. Even today, I worked with a post-traumatic stress veterans group up in Ohio. And they are thinking that these random events occur out on war, but I'm actually showing them how to find the hidden order to it, where they actually come to a state of grace and dissolve the post-traumatic stress disorder out of it by seeing how it all worked for their favor. And on the way, not in the way. So by asking the question, whatever's happening right now in my life, how is it helping me fulfill what's most meaningful to me? That's a very powerful question. And if you don't stop until you get the answer, until you get a tear in the eye, like we just had, you will find that order, and there won't be chaos. It never was. Chaos is simply you being unconscious of half the equation.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. This is absolutely mind-blowing for so many people who are going to be listening to this, to know that the chaos that they're experiencing is actually in their control because they have a lopsided perception, as you would put it there. So
yeah, I had a lady the other day that said, my boyfriend left me. And she was infatuated with parts of him and resenting other parts.
Mm-hmm.
And she was dependent on that and let herself become dependent on that, which is one of the reasons why he probably left, because she was dependent, was playing underdog, and that's not a match. Don't ever play underdog if you want to keep somebody, because they're going to go off and find somebody that's more of a match.
True that, yeah.
And so she started to do it, and I said, so what's the benefit of this? She said, how can there be a benefit out of the man that you fantasize that you love? She didn't think it was a fantasy.
Yeah.
Left you. I said, well, if he wants to be with somebody else, he's not really in love with you. Why would you want to be with somebody who doesn't really want to love you? It doesn't focus on you. And why do you want to be with somebody you can't be yourself? You're walking on eggshells all the time. And why do you want to be with somebody that you're addicted to and not empowered by? And I just started asking her questions. And the moment he left, who started providing some of the behavioral traits that he demonstrated? And then all of a sudden she goes, I've been wanting to talk to you, Dr. Demartini, for 3 years. I never had the courage to do it. If he hadn't left, I would never have actually got on the telephone and got the consult set up and do it. And this is insights. And I've been forsaking things in my own personal development for the sake of this relationship, trying to make it work instead of actually developing. And I'm back on the development. And now I'm realizing that that's one of the benefits. And now I've got a bunch of people in my life that I'm close to again, that I pushed away while I was in the relationship. And I'm now doing what I want to do in the hours I want to do it. Yes. And she started looking at the blessings. And then when she did it, she stacked them all up and saw how it was on the way, not in the way. She wrote a beautiful thank you letter for him having the courage to do what she was not willing to do, even though her intuition was saying this is not the one. Because if you're infatuated, this isn't the one.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of got freed of it. And she goes, thank you. And she wasn't angry anymore. And she wasn't thinking it was a mistake. She actually saw it as a gift.
Oh my gosh, that is so empowering for so many people. And when you said, are you addicted to somebody or empowered by them? I think even that one little piece of wisdom you just shared could blow people's minds and have them look at the reality of their relationships in all realms, from intimate, business, friendships, family relationships, and really look at that and balance themselves out. So
there's a law called the law of the one to many. It's the most universal law as there is. And the law of the one to many says we have one soul and many personas, one being ontologically, and many personas that are becoming. Each of these personas are masks. They're facades. That's what persona means, facade. Personal development is the integration of the personas. That's what it means. So she realized that if you have all these personas and you're playing underdog, you're moving in the direction down into persona, the many. And people that move down into persona are looking for the special one to counterbalance the many. And people that are very integrated and very empowered, if there was somebody who's less empowered from them, they're going to be looking for the many because they haven't found a match. So this one that thinks this is the one, anytime you hear yourself saying, I got the one, that's a sign you're infatuated because you see more similarities and differences. When you resent somebody, you see more differences and similarities, and it's a many. So if you're in a situation where you're the underdog and you fear the loss of them and you're sacrificing parts of you carefully, walking on eggshells, fearing the loss of them, being jealous, having the green-eyed monster, fantasizing about the future, sacrificing what's normally empowering and important to you, that's not the one, because that's not an act of balance. That's not a mate, a match. It's an infatuation, because they're going to go out and crack that fantasy that you have that you think is love, crack that infatuation by going off with somebody else to train you not to disempower yourself again. That's the lesson.
Wow. And, not an easy thing to swallow for a lot of people, but the best thing they possibly could. That is kind of the magic pill, isn't it? To swallow the truth a bit on that.
Yes. If you think you have a crush, be prepared to be crushed.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And would you say that, and I feel like we could have an amazing conversation around relationships that would serve a lot of people, but I want to be respectful of your time today. But just on that, because a lot of people find themselves in those dynamics where there is somebody who's more resentful, is somebody who's more infatuated. They're attracting each other, aren't they, to teach each other the lessons, to balance them out. So go ahead.
There's no mistake in any relationship dynamic, all of its lessons.
All of its lessons.
All of its lessons. When people come up to me and said, I had a lady that came up to me and says, I failed 3 marriages. I said, no, you're in a relationship. Did you learn something? Because you're arbitrarily comparing your current reality to a fantasy about how it's supposed to have been.
Yes.
And that it should be this way. It has to be that way. And you try to force that into fantasizing that picture and now doing it. Now you're thinking you failed. You don't fail in your own actions. You fail when you compare your actions to somebody else's value system or traditions or idealisms, mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers, conventions, or traditions. And if you compare yourself to those actions, you can never do anything but think you've let yourself down. The question is, did you learn something? Did you grow? If you blame them or blame yourself, Epictetus, the Greek philosopher, great little guy. I can't agree with everything he said, but a lot of it I can. The Greek philosopher said, first you blame others as you're growing on your personal development journey. When you're new on the journey, you like to blame other people, be a victim of history. Then you blame yourself on this self-development process. Then you realize there was nothing to blame in the first place. You transcend the illusions of credit and blame. Take no credit, take no blame, just keep focused on chief aim. The name of the game is thank you, I love you. You realize that other was just an illusion. So it's all just a journey process. I met a lady that was married to one man, my grandmother to the grandfather. She died at 101, he died at 100. 78-year marriage. Wow. The last 30 years in Hollywood, Florida, walking to the beach, going home, eating, walking the beach, going home, kind of a routine, hand walking, a bit of romance, but nothing really amazing, just kind of an existence. But amazing, that respect. Then I met this lady in Belfast, Ireland on the ship, The World, where I live. And 94 years old, just finished climbing Mount Kilimanjaro that week and flew in from Mount Kilimanjaro. 94 years old, who asked me to take her to the theater. And my wife, Athena, Athena Starblum was my wife at the time. And Athena, I asked her, I said, this lady asked me to take her to the theater. Do you mind if I take her to the theater tonight? She looks at the lady and she says, absolutely, go have some fun. So I go down at 7 o'clock to take this lady down. I was going to meet her in the lobby. And she got 2 other guys. There were 3 of us. She took 3 guys to take her to the theater. For just a moment, I thought, wait a minute, I thought I was special, but now I'm just one of the guys. So I take this 94-year-old woman to the theater, and the whole time she's there, she's just a hoot. I mean, we were just laughing, and she was such a fun thing. And she said, I've been married 5 times. All of my husbands died having sex with me. Okay, now, and she says, I got 30 years worth of goals. I've got $200 million in assets, and I'm traveling the world meeting amazing men like you. And I thought, okay, here's 2 people that follow tradition, that have kind of a okay, mundane kind of existence, but definitely amazing. 78-year marriage is pretty amazing. I was inspired by that. But here's a lady that has a completely opposite life. I'm also inspired by it. So beware of the boxes about how it's supposed to be, and create your life the way you dream. And watch out for rules from outer sources that may be antiquated for your life. You got to give yourself permission to be and create your life the way you would love it. And I live a very unique life. As you know, I travel full time. Well, except the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I full-time travel. I meet amazing people. I go to amazing places. I get to do cool stuff, change lives and watch lives change. I created my life. There's no reason why you can't create whatever life it is. I really believe you can empower all areas of your life, and there's no reason why you can't. And there's no rules saying you can't. And if you don't live in any one place, you don't have to be trapped by any one of those rules. You can just float around and live by all the rules you want to create. And if you don't, any area of your life you don't empower, other people are going to overpower. So if you don't set the rules for your life, other people do. And no one's dedicated to your fulfillment except you. So your fulfillment will be squashed in multitasking, trying to please other people that way by default, instead of actually doing something that inspires people by design.
Well, you certainly do inspire me, and I love that you create another, even if sometimes we need another box to see what's possible, and then we can remove the boxing. The way that you live your life and everything that you do, I know you do it with such heart, and it's truly inspiring to me and so many others. So I want to absolutely thank you for that and for sharing that. And your stories are incredible. I'm going to be re-listening to this one a couple of times for sure. Now, I realize that we've taken it up to the hour mark. I haven't had a chance to ask one particular question that some of my coaching clients would love to hear the answer from.
Okay.
Would you be open to answering that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just asked you another question anyway, didn't I? But the question that they had was, during this time, they said they wanted to hear your perspective regarding vaccines, especially in the context of potential future mandates. They're Americans like you as well, and they were really wanting to hear your perspective on that.
Well, that's a loaded question to different people.
Yes.
I have a friend of mine named Paul Preston, who's the head of the Medical Association in Ontario, Canada. And he's been working in hospitals and helping organize hospitals there. He was noticing a run on some measles and some other types of conditions that were starting to go up. And they implemented a vaccination, and it dropped 60% in less than a month. And so in his ideas, there's a place for it. Now, a vaccine is, if a person gets a subclinical experience with the COVID virus. By the way, there's hundreds of COVID viruses, hundreds.
Yeah.
And it causes all the range of symptoms from digestive systems to respiratory systems. And some people get it and they're subclinical and no one even knows they have it, and they're carriers, and their immune system adapted. And so now if they get around it, nobody's affected by it. That's why Sweden right now is looking from another perspective. They're letting some people die, and they're letting everybody get it to make sure that there's an immune system for the future. They have a different model. Okay, and they've lost 600 people out of 9.5 million, which is a little higher ratio, but they'd rather do that and have everybody immune and go on about their business. That's just a different belief system. But vaccination is something we all do without us knowing. Every time we get infected, we create an antibody response. And so a vaccine is somehow a way of giving a viral protein or a viral capsid or something that's part of it to initiate a reaction. So when you're doing it, you have the antibody selected for that specific response. And that in itself is just a knowledgeable piece of knowledge that we can use and apply. Now, there's also adjuvants and other additives and things to vaccines that some people have reactions to. I had one boy who died from a reaction from a vaccine within 4.5 minutes.
Wow.
I've seen it happen. But it's rare compared to probably the advantages there. I've had all kind of people try to associate vaccination with all kind of other conditions. Some may be associated, some may be possibly causal. It's some variable data, and you got a lot of biases out there, one way or the other. None of my kids have been vaccinated. I was vaccinated as a child. I didn't know any different, but none of mine were ever vaccinated. None of them have ever been to a vaccination that I'm aware of at all. So I didn't feel that the priorities, the advantages in our environment was that way. But at the same time, some people could justify, well, then you're not caring about the rest of the people. For somehow, if they did get it, it could be a factor. Well, if they're vaccinated, it wouldn't matter anyway for them.
Exactly.
But so my kids have never been vaccinated.
Yeah.
I'm not a promoter of vaccinations under normal settings, but I'm not a demoter of it. I see both. There's always two sides to things. But if I was going to go to Haiti, right when they had the earthquake, and they had cholera break out and smallpox and stuff start breaking out, and I was going to work in the sewers and try to clean up the sewer systems and the water systems, and I was going to be around that. And my immune system, I wasn't going to eat what I normally do. I wasn't going to be doing my yoga. I wouldn't be doing my normal lifestyle. I would probably say that a vaccine has a place there. Bill Gates, obviously, is a vaccination promoter. There's many reasons for it I could go into. But he's seen in some undeveloped countries the numbers of people that have died from various types of conditions. And he's seen where vaccinations have been done, that number's dropped. So if you're attempting to save lives, there's a place for it. So I don't want to make it good or bad. I like to put it in context. Water is toxic if you get too much of it. You can drown. But water, if you got too little of it, can kill you. There's a dosage that is ideal. And I think that everything has a place, and you have to put it in context and be as objective as you can and try to put all the variables in there instead of just being black and white biased and say it's bad or good. Because yet I've not seen anything good or bad. That's a survival thinking. I've seen everything has a place. I wrote a book when I was 23. And one of the books that I read to help write that book as a research was biotoxicology. And another one that I read was, biotoxicology was one of them. There's another one called homotoxicology, but biotoxicology. And in there, I studied all the conjugation process, the liver, the skin, and the sweat glands. And I looked at every mechanism that had been known, and it had a list of every known toxin that was known at the time in the environment. And how does the body respond to it? What does it do? And every one of the compounds that they had found in nature, from PVC things to plastics to very carcinogenic materials, our body has the capacity to actually dilute, conjugate, make water soluble, and excrete if it's not in too high concentration. When I read that, I realized I can't control always things in the environment, but I can control what I can do in the person, and I control what that person is doing to maximize their physiology and their detoxification and immune responses. So my advice is to preferably go and maximize your immune response. Secondarily, look at vaccinations. But personally, Thomas Crown, as an MD that talked about this, if you try to prevent everybody from facing stimuluses like viruses, you stop the evolutionary process, because viruses are in lateral gene transfer mechanisms, horizontal gene transference, and they're responsible for getting new information in and out of the members of a species to help the species evolve. Everybody go online and look up lateral gene transfer, horizontal gene transfer. There's vertical, which occurs from procreation, and there's horizontal, which occurs from viruses. If you understand that, you'll understand that viruses and their epidemics are essential for evolution. And it moderates some of the fear by being aware. I always say fear is a byproduct of lack of awareness, and so is fantasy. Phobia and philia are usually incomplete awarenesses that distract us, and we label things good or bad instead of seeing as they're just events. How can we use them to our advantage? So I'm not going to label vaccines as good or bad. I'm going to label them as there's a place for them. Let's use them wisely and not unnecessarily when they're not needed.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful that you took that time to answer that question, because I think that is going to really support people to be informed. So they're not just being, like you're saying, black and white, but hear another perspective, research, question things, informed so that you can make the right choices for yourself and your family. Absolutely. So this has been an absolute honor.
One last thing.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yep. Oops.
Well, I was just going to say, they now know that the nervous system, if stimulated a certain way, can induce the same responses in the immune system as sometimes the drugs or vaccines that we do. So learning about our potential is the highest priority thing to advance us forward, to prevent those problems in the future. And learning about our potential. So anything we can do to maximize the human potential is the first step. So pardon me going that last little statement, but I just wanted to add that last bit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'd spend the whole day here with you if I could. So thank you so much. And absolutely, I think that that is going to be super powerful for people to really get into their minds and think about. So I want to absolutely thank you and honor you for being the incredible leader that you are, and such a you really do walk your talk. I think that's what inspires me personally so much, is getting to meet you and go to your events and get to spend any time that I get to in your energy, or even reading your posts or watching your videos. You are who you are. You walk your talk. You inspire everybody who is open to this realm. And I'm very, very honored for your time today. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Yeah.
But I would say this. There's nothing missing me. I'm a hero, I'm a villain, I'm a kind, I'm a cruel, I'm all the above. Don't in any way think I'm not also, the opposite of whatever you imagine. I'm all the above.
Okay, good. All right, I like that. And I've seen a little bit of that, and I think that's
got both sides. You remember that song that one lady said, I'm a virgin, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a this, I'm a little of everything.
Yeah, I love that. That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time and being all parts of who you are, and that we all are, and for your wisdom and everything. I won't pump you up too much. I'm not trying to put you on a pedestal here. Definitely in all of our hearts, and I'll look forward to the next time that we get to connect. Was there anything that you wanted to, anywhere you wanted to push people toward, or any other final thoughts that you had to mention?
No, there's two things they might do. One, if they would like to determine what their values are so they can identify what's really important to them, so they can prioritize their life. On my website, there's a value determination process. That's just Demartini value determination process. It's complimentary, it's free, it's private, no one will ever see it except them. They can do it and do it again and really get a clear idea of what's important to them. And also, if there is somebody that's really overwhelmed by this Saint Corona, I call it, I also have a little thing. Every week I have a little conversation answering questions about Corona to assist people. And they can go on and look up my website and find the Corona. It's a little Facebook group that we do just to answer questions, to help the people solve some of their angst. Because I find that education helps people solve some of the volatilities of their emotions. So there's a little Corona Facebook group that we've done that's got maybe 10,000 people or something like that in it, that just basically tries to educate people, because their people are sometimes reacting and they're seeing misinformation on TV, etc. And that's it. But then give people, my website is also educational, drdemartini.com. So if they can take advantage of that, if that'll help them, that'll be meaningful.
Yeah, and I recommend the values determination test on your website. It is by far the best tool I've found around determining your values. I've revisited it many times, And it's really cool because it keeps track of it for you, and you get these beautiful little graphs, and you get to reflect back and see what's shifted and changed. And yeah, I really recommend that. So I will have both your website with the values determination and also your Facebook group. That's amazing. I'll look forward to joining that myself as well. So thank you again, Dr. John Demartini. I'll look forward to seeing you again sometime soon.
Thank you for another lovely interview. Thank you.
Absolutely. Always. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Enjoy. Thank you.